The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. From her small apartment balcony, Ava watched the world blur into streaks of grey. Across the courtyard, the lights from the penthouse glowed, warm, golden, and impossibly far from her world. She didn't need to look twice to know who lived there. Ethan Cole. The billionaire neighbor who bought the entire top floor last winter. The man whose car was worth more than her building. Every evening, he'd stand there, coffee in hand, jaw set, eyes scanning the city like he owned it. Maybe he did. Ava couldn't decide if she disliked him for his arrogance, or for the way he made her feel seen even when she wished she wasn't. That night, thunder cracked. Her balcony door rattled open, sending her papers flying. She rushed forward, barefoot on the cold floor, catching one by one, until her favorite sketch tore in half and flew right into his balcony. She froze. Ethan stepped out, expression unreadable, his shirt slightly damp from the storm. For a moment, he just looked at her, then bent, picked up the torn paper, and gently pressed it to his chest to keep it dry. "You dropped something," he said, voice calm but deep enough to cut through the rain. Ava wanted to shout, to say she didn't need his help. But instead, she whispered, "Keep it." Then closed her door. She didn't know why her chest hurt. Maybe because kindness from someone you've decided to hate always hurts more. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city, let's see how wide kindness still spreads. The next morning, sunlight replaced the storm. Ava walked out for her morning coffee, her hoodie pulled tight. As she opened her door, something slid against the floor, a neatly folded envelope. Inside, her torn sketch, perfectly taped back together. And under it, a single note in smooth handwriting, "Every broken thing can still be beautiful." Her stomach flipped. She hated that it made her smile. Later that week, she found herself watching him again. His balcony door stayed open longer. Sometimes he caught her looking, sometimes she caught him pretending not to. The air between them was strange, electric. One evening, when her heater failed and the city power dimmed, she sat in the cold, wrapped in a blanket. Suddenly, there was a soft knock. She opened the door to find Ethan standing there with a small box in his hands. "You're freezing," he said simply. "Take this." Inside was a portable heater. A good one. She blinked. "You didn't have to." "I know," he interrupted softly. "But I wanted to." Ava hesitated, pride battling gratitude. "You think money fixes everything, here?" He looked down, the faintest sadness in his eyes. "No. I think sometimes warmth is all people need." Then he turned and walked away before she could answer. She sat there, the heater humming beside her, her throat tight with something she couldn't name. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest, comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. The days that followed blurred into quiet exchanges, a nod in the hallway, a shared elevator silence that wasn't so empty anymore. But the truth was simple, she didn't trust him. Once, she'd seen him on the news, Ethan Cole, the ruthless developer, accused of tearing down an orphanage to build luxury condos. She'd seen the anger in people's eyes. She'd believed it. That belief had become her armor. So why did her chest ache when he smiled at her that way? Why did it feel like he carried storms behind his calm? That night, Ava couldn't sleep. She took her sketchbook to the balcony again. She drew the city, the rain, the broken windows, the golden light of his penthouse glowing softly. A voice startled her. "You draw sadness beautifully." She turned. Ethan leaned on the railing, a rare, gentle smile on his face. "Maybe because sadness listens," she said. He nodded. "Then maybe you understand me more than most." Before she could answer, lightning split the sky again, and she saw, for the first time, something fragile in his expression. Something human. He wasn't who she thought. And that realization scared her more than hate ever did. That night's lightning didn't just split the sky, it cracked something inside Ava too. After that conversation, she found herself looking for Ethan more often. She'd catch him standing on his balcony at dawn, hair messy, sleeves rolled, his world suddenly less untouchable. One morning, she noticed him waiting by the mailboxes. When she approached, he stepped aside politely but lingered, as if searching for the right words. "You left this in the lobby yesterday," he said, holding up her pencil. It was broken in half, but neatly taped together. Ava blinked. "You didn't have to." "I know," he said again, with that same calm tone that somehow disarmed her more than any apology could. They stood there in silence for a heartbeat too long. Then she took the pencil, her fingers brushing his, and warmth flooded her chest. She pulled back fast, pretending to check her phone. "Thanks." He smiled faintly. "You're welcome, neighbor." That word, neighbor, sounded softer from him. Less like geography, more like an unspoken promise. She didn't realize her cheeks had gone red until she caught her reflection in the elevator mirror. She whispered to herself, "Get it together, Ava." But her heart wasn't listening. That evening, she watched him again from her balcony, sketching his silhouette against the golden skyline. When the wind carried the scent of coffee and rain, she didn't move away this time. Down below, the city was alive. Horns, laughter, footsteps, everything moving fast. Yet somehow, between two balconies, time stood still. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. It wasn't long before the walls between them started to fall, in small, accidental ways. One night, Ava came home late, drenched from another storm. Her grocery bag ripped halfway up the stairs, oranges rolling everywhere. Before she could curse, a hand appeared beside hers, steady and warm. Ethan knelt down silently, helping her gather them. "Seems like the rain has a personal issue with you," he joked lightly. She laughed despite herself. "Yeah, it's been my most loyal companion lately." He glanced at her then, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Maybe loyalty isn't always a bad thing. He carried her bag up to her door before she could argue. When he turned to leave, she noticed a scar running across his wrist, faint but deep, like an old story he didn't want to tell. She wanted to ask. She didn't. Inside, she sat on her couch, staring at the door. The sound of his footsteps fading down the hall felt heavier than the storm outside. Later that night, she found herself scrolling through articles about him again. Old news. Angry headlines. Ethan Cole, the billionaire with a cold heart. But buried beneath the noise was a smaller article she hadn't seen before, about a children's hospital rebuilt quietly under his name months after the scandal. No publicity. No statement. Just done. Her heart twisted. Maybe she'd been wrong about him all along. The next morning, she left a small sketch under his door, a child holding an umbrella for a tall man in the rain. She didn't sign it. She didn't have to. Hours later, when she stepped out, there was a thermos waiting for her on the doormat. Hot cocoa. Thought you might need warmth today. EC. Her lips curved before she realized. It was such a simple gesture. But to someone who'd learned to expect indifference, simple things could feel enormous. Now, whenever she heard his footsteps in the hallway, her heart raced a little faster. And though she told herself 100 times that she hated him, hate didn't make your chest ache like this. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. Ava didn't know it yet, but this fragile, quiet connection between them was about to be tested, in a way that would reveal both of their scars. The next few days felt strangely calm, the kind of quiet that sits on your chest, heavy with questions you're afraid to ask. Ava kept her distance again, not because she wanted to, but because she was scared of wanting more. Every small kindness from Ethan replayed in her head like soft echoes she couldn't silence. One morning, while sketching by the window, she saw him step into a sleek black car, suit crisp, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He looked powerful again. Untouchable. The man from the headlines, not the one who'd taped her drawing back together. By afternoon, the whispers began. The building doorman chatted with someone in the lobby, words like lawsuit, family dispute, inheritance. Ava tried not to listen, but gossip has a way of clawing its way into you. That evening, she found him sitting on the steps outside their building, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, head in his hands. The sight of him, The billionaire who looked like he could buy the city suddenly looked human. She walked up quietly. "Rough day?" He didn't look up. Just another reminder that money can't fix people. Her brows furrowed. "Meaning?" He chuckled bitterly. "My father passed away last week. I didn't even get the call until the funeral was over. My family, they made sure I stayed the villain even there." The words hit her like cold wind. He wasn't boasting, just tired. She sat beside him without asking. "You don't have to be strong right now." He looked at her then, eyes red, voice cracking. "You shouldn't believe everything people say about me, Ava." "I don't," she whispered. "Not anymore." He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders loosening for the first time. They sat like that, two broken silhouettes under the dim streetlight, and the world felt quiet again. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. The following days blurred into something gentler. He brought her coffee without a word. She left small sketches by his door. Their silence said more than words ever could. But one night changed everything. Ava had just finished a commission, an art piece for a local charity, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Ms. Hale." The voice was clipped, businesslike. "This is from the Harborview Gazette. You've been seen often with Mr. Ethan Cole. Would you like to comment on your relationship?" Her heart froze. "My, what?" "We're running a feature tomorrow. Billionaire redeems himself through new girlfriend. You might want to clarify before we publish." She hung up instantly, panic tightening her chest. How did they even know her name? Moments later, her doorbell rang. Ethan stood there, phone in hand, jaw tense. "You got the call too?" She nodded. "What is happening?" He sighed, guilt shadowing his face. "My PR team, they did this without asking. They thought cleaning my image meant using you." Ava's breath hitched. "So I'm just another project?" "No," he stepped closer. "I didn't know. I swear." But hurt flooded faster than logic. "Then tell them to stop." "I did," he said quietly. "They won't listen. The story's already out." Tears blurred her vision. "Do you have any idea what this does to me? My job, my privacy." "I'll fix it," he promised. "You can't fix everything with money, Ethan," she snapped. "Maybe that's the problem. You don't know how to fix something with heart." She closed the door before he could answer. That night, she cried until her pillow was damp. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from strangers, reporters, and friends asking if it was true. She stared at the torn sketch he'd once repaired, and for the first time, she wished she'd never let him in. "Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." Across the hall, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the same city lights that once connected them. He replayed her words over and over, realizing the truth. This time, money couldn't fix what he'd broken. And outside, as rain began again, two hearts stayed awake in the same building, but worlds apart. Days passed. The silence between their apartments felt louder than any argument ever could. Ava stopped sketching by the window. She avoided the balcony completely. Even when she heard footsteps in the hallway, that familiar, steady rhythm that used to make her heart jump, she didn't look up. But inside her chest, something restless kept whispering, "You miss him." Across the hall, Ethan stared at the note she'd once slipped under his door, "Every broken thing can still be beautiful." It mocked him now. Because no matter how many times he called the magazine to retract the story, the headline still spread. "Billionaire finds redemption in artist's arms." He wanted to tear it down from every wall, every screen, every whisper. But he couldn't undo what pride and power had built around him. One night, he left a note outside her door. "Please let me explain, just once." It stayed untouched until the cleaning crew threw it away the next morning. Ava read it before it disappeared, but she couldn't bring herself to reply. The world had already painted her as the girl who tamed a billionaire. People she barely knew sent her messages about love and luck, as if her heart wasn't breaking quietly behind every unread text. She told herself she didn't care. But when she saw him one evening in the lobby, tired, unshaven, shoulders slumped, her resolve faltered. He looked nothing like the man on magazine covers. He looked lost. The elevator doors opened. For a brief second, their eyes met. Neither spoke. But in that silence, forgiveness flickered like the first light after a long night. If you believe love still wins, comment in. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. The next day, Ava received an unexpected email from an art gallery, invitation, city charity exhibit, featuring your work. Her heart skipped. It was a big opportunity. Then she saw the footer, sponsored by Cole Foundation. She froze. He was still trying to help her. Still trying to make things right, even from afar. That night, she went to the balcony again for the first time in weeks. The air was cool, the city lights sharp against the sky. Across the courtyard, Ethan was there too, standing quietly, hands in his pockets, looking almost afraid to move. She took a deep breath. "You shouldn't have done that," she said softly across the gap. His head lifted instantly. "I wasn't trying to buy forgiveness, Ava. I just wanted you to get what you deserve." Her voice trembled. "And what if what I deserve is peace, without your name attached to it?" He hesitated. "Then I'll disappear. But I couldn't stand by and watch the world ruin someone who only ever saw the good in broken things." A lump formed in her throat. The rain began to fall again, gentle this time, like the city itself was holding its breath. She whispered, barely audible, "I didn't want to believe them, but you made it so hard to believe you." He nodded, rain clinging to his lashes. "Maybe I deserve that." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with unspoken apologies, with the kind of ache only honesty can bring. Ava turned away first, retreating into the glow of her apartment. But as she closed the door, something in her heart softened. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a single moment. Maybe it was built piece by piece, like art. That night, she opened her sketchbook again for the first time. The drawing she made was simple. 2 doors, inches apart, light spilling out from beneath both. And for the first time since it all began, she smiled. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Ethan, sitting alone in his penthouse, received a message from the gallery manager that same night. Ms. Hale accepted the exhibit. "Congratulations." He closed his eyes and let out a long breath he didn't know he was holding. Maybe this was what redemption looked like, not being forgiven by the world, but being seen again by the one person who mattered. End of part 4. Wait for continue to proceed seamlessly into part 5. You said continue seamlessly writing next part as you were told to write. Don't restart the part continue as it is the succession of previous part. Also tell me part that is being generated, ChatGPT said. Part 5. The night of the gallery, 800 words. The night of the charity exhibit arrived sooner than either of them expected. Ava stood before her mirror, hands trembling slightly as she fastened her earrings. Her reflection looked calm, but her heart wasn't. This was her first major gallery showing, and though she tried not to think about him, every painting, every brushstroke somehow carried his shadow. Down the street, the city lights glittered against the wet pavement. The scent of rain clung to the air again, as if it refused to leave their story unfinished. The gallery buzzed with soft music, glasses clinking, and the low murmur of admiration. Ava's artwork lined the walls, sketches of faces, eyes, and unspoken emotions. Near the center hung one that stopped everyone, 2 balconies in the rain. She didn't expect to see him. She'd told herself he wouldn't come. But when the crowd parted briefly, there he was, standing quietly, a dark suit perfectly tailored, yet eyes soft, uncertain. Ethan stayed near the entrance, as though afraid to cross into her world. The organizers thanked him publicly for his foundation's sponsorship, and though people clapped, his gaze never left her. When their eyes met, something in her chest fluttered painfully. Not hate, not anger, just memory. He approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. "Your work is breathtaking," he said softly. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady but distant. "Seems your foundation does more than just rebuild hospitals." He winced slightly. "Ava, I didn't mean for that story to happen." But if helping this gallery meant you'd be seen for what you are, I'd do it again. She looked up at him. And what am I, Ethan? He hesitated. The first person who ever made me want to be good again. The words broke through her defenses like light through glass. She turned away before tears could betray her. Just then, the host announced an auction piece, her balcony painting. Starting bid, 5,000. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Bids climbed quickly, 10, 15, 20. Then a new voice cut through. 50,000. Every head turned. Ethan stood calm, hands clasped, gaze fixed on the painting, not her. Ava's breath caught. The host's smile widened. Sold. To Mr. Cole. Applause filled the room, but Ava felt her pulse racing for another reason entirely. As the crowd moved on, she whispered, "You didn't have to do that." He smiled faintly. "I didn't buy it for me. I bought it so no one else could own what was ours." Her throat tightened. Before she could respond, he gently handed her an envelope. Inside was her original torn sketch, perfectly framed this time, the note beneath it still there, "Every broken thing can still be beautiful." And suddenly, she realized she didn't hate him anymore. She didn't know what she felt, only that it was something deeper, softer. Something that made her chest ache in the best possible way. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest, comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Later that night, as the guests left and the lights dimmed, Ava stepped out onto the gallery's small terrace. The city sparkled below, the same city where they'd both been lonely, just across a courtyard apart. Ethan joined her quietly. "You once said sadness listens," he murmured. "Maybe tonight, it finally heard." She smiled faintly. Maybe it did. They stood side by side, the silence between them no longer heavy, just peaceful. "Do you ever wonder," she said softly, "if we only found each other because of all the rain?" He chuckled quietly. "Then I'll never wish for sunshine again." She laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible." "Maybe," he said, looking at her, "but at least now you're smiling." She turned toward him fully this time, and for the first time in months, the distance between them didn't feel impossible. The following week, the world outside their little moment didn't stay kind. The magazine that once smeared Ethan returned with a new headline, "Billionaire's Art Romance, Charity or Cover-Up." It spread fast. Photos from the gallery circulated online, Ava's shy smile beside Ethan's quiet stare, captions twisting kindness into calculation. Ava stared at the screen, numb. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Sellout. Gold digger. Of course he bought her art, she bought his sympathy. She shut it off and sank to the floor, tears stinging her eyes. For a moment, she hated herself for caring, but words can cut deeper than knives when you've fought your whole life to be seen for something pure. When Ethan called, she didn't answer. When he knocked on her door, she stayed silent. She couldn't face him, not while the world was watching. That night, lightning cracked again, the same way it had the night they met. The storm outside raged, but inside, it was her heart that thundered. She heard another knock, firmer this time. "Ava," his voice pleaded through the rain. "Please. Just open the door." She pressed her palms against it, tears falling freely now. "Why won't it stop, Ethan? Every time I think things are okay, it just hurts again." "Because you keep trying to fight it alone," he said quietly. "Let me in." Her fingers trembled on the handle, but she turned it. He stood there soaked, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes glistening like the storm had followed him inside. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I couldn't stay away," he said, voice breaking. "You think this is about fixing my image? No, Ava. You're the only thing that's made me feel human again." Her breath hitched. "Then why does it hurt so much to love you?" "Because the world doesn't understand what's real anymore," he said softly, stepping closer. "But we do." She wanted to push him away, to hold on to the anger that protected her, but the truth was, she couldn't. When he reached for her hand, she didn't pull back. His skin was cold from the rain, but his grip was steady. For a long, fragile moment, they just stood there, two broken people who kept finding each other through every storm. Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. I don't know if I can forgive the world. But maybe I can forgive you. He closed his eyes, relief washing through his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. That's enough, he whispered. That's everything. She nodded slowly, tears still slipping down her cheeks. You know, I used to draw to escape pain. Now I draw to remember it, because pain means something was real. Ethan smiled sadly. Then maybe I should thank your art for leading me here. For the first time, she let herself laugh, a shaky, fragile sound that felt like healing. When thunder rolled again, he looked toward the balcony. Seems like the rain doesn't want to quit on us. Maybe it's reminding us we're still alive, she said softly. Outside, the city shimmered with wet reflections, neon lights bending in puddles, the hum of cars distant but steady. Inside her apartment, the warmth between them grew quiet but undeniable. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm not who they say I am, even if you never choose me. She met his eyes. You don't have to prove it, Ethan. Just be it. He exhaled, and for the first time, she saw peace in his expression, not victory, not control, just peace. In that moment, she realized something. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing not to let it own you anymore. And with that, she leaned into him, not as a savior, not as a story, but as someone who'd found the courage to feel again. By dawn, the city was washed clean. Rainwater glittered on rooftops, and the air smelled like second chances. Ava woke on the couch, wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember pulling over herself. For a moment, she thought the night before had been a dream, the knock, the tears, his soaked figure standing in her doorway. But when she turned, Ethan was still there, asleep in the chair near the balcony, head tilted back, one hand resting over his heart like he'd been guarding something fragile. The early light softened his face, stripping away everything that made him the billionaire the world hated. He just looked like a man who'd fought too hard to stay standing. She watched him for a moment, the ache in her chest unfamiliar but strangely warm. Then, quietly, she walked to the kitchen and made coffee. The soft clinking of mugs stirred him awake. He blinked. You should have woken me. You looked like you needed the sleep, she said. You barely moved all night. He smiled weakly. I was afraid if I slept too deeply, I'd wake up and find you gone. Her eyes softened, but she said nothing. She handed him a cup instead. For a long while, they sat in silence, the only sound the hum of the heater and the distant city waking up. Then Ava broke it, her voice quiet. I don't know what happens now. Ethan took a sip, his gaze steady. Then let's not decide yet. Let's just breathe. That simple sentence felt like a lifeline. Outside, the sun fought its way through the clouds. Light spilled across the balcony, the same one where their story had begun. Ava stood there, gripping the railing, letting the warmth touch her skin. She turned back to him. Do you think people like us ever really escape what others think? He walked to her side, hands in pockets. Maybe not. But maybe we stop needing to. She smiled faintly. You make it sound easy. It's not, he said. It just feels worth it now. Something in his tone made her chest tighten again. It wasn't grand or dramatic, it was honest. And sometimes, honesty was the most romantic thing of all. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. The following week, Ava's exhibit became the talk of the art world, not because of Ethan's money, but because people saw truth in her work. The critics wrote about emotion, struggle, redemption, everything she'd painted through her pain. She didn't tell him right away, but she caught him standing outside the gallery one evening, unnoticed, watching her name glowing in gold letters. He didn't go in. He just smiled, proud from afar. Later that night, he texted her one simple message. The world finally sees you like I always did. Her reply took a few minutes to type. Maybe it's time they see you that way too. It was the first time she'd reached out to him since the storm, and for both of them, it felt like the beginning of something unspoken. Days passed, lighter this time. They didn't rush back into old patterns. No balcony confessions or sudden declarations. Just quiet understanding, an occasional coffee, shared silences, and small smiles that said more than any apology ever could. One evening, as she walked home from the gallery, she found a folded note taped to her door. His handwriting again. "There's still rain in the forecast tonight. If you're not busy, maybe let's not face it alone this time." Ava looked up toward the sky, clouds thickening, air heavy with promise. For a second, she hesitated. Then she smiled, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the hallway. He was waiting by his door, as if he'd known she'd come. No words. No speeches. Just two neighbors standing together as the rain began again, but this time, neither of them ran for cover. They let it fall. The rain came again that night, softer this time, like the sky had learned mercy. Ava stood beside Ethan on the balcony, the city spread out below them in gold and silver lights. Drops glittered against the railing, reflecting the glow from his apartment. She felt his warmth beside her, steady and close, but not demanding. For once, the silence didn't ache. It healed. "I used to hate this sound," Ava said quietly, watching the rain trail down the glass. "It meant another leak, another lonely night, another reminder that I couldn't control anything." Ethan turned to her. "And now?" She smiled faintly. "Now it sounds like peace." He exhaled slowly, almost afraid to break the moment. "Ava, when I first moved here, I thought success meant being above it all. Owning everything, needing no one. But then you looked at me, really looked, and I realized how empty winning feels when there's no one to share it with." Her heart softened. "You know, you ruined my hate story," she whispered with a small laugh. "I swore I hated you, and then you went and made me care." He smiled, that same crooked, unguarded smile she'd learned to trust. Maybe hate is just love that's scared to admit itself. They stood closer now, shoulders brushing. The rain softened to a mist. For the first time, it didn't feel like a storm. It felt like a curtain falling at the end of something beautiful. "Before we close this chapter, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city below. Let's see how far a single story about forgiveness can travel." Ava glanced toward the framed sketch still hanging near her window, the one he'd repaired months ago. The tape lines were visible, imperfect, but somehow that made it more precious. It was a memory of two people who refused to give up on what was broken. She turned to Ethan. "Do you ever wonder why we met? Out of all the cities, all the storms, why us?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because maybe the universe doesn't fix people. It just lets them find each other." Her eyes stung, but this time, not from pain. From gratitude. If this story touched something inside you, don't scroll away. Tap like, not for the happy ending, but for every soul who's ever tried to love again after being hurt. One click means I understand. The world outside kept moving, traffic lights, laughter, footsteps, but up here, time slowed. The rain faded to a whisper. Ava leaned her head on his shoulder, and for once, she didn't feel like the struggling artist or the girl from the wrong side of the city. She just felt human, messy, hopeful, real. Ethan kissed her forehead gently. "Whatever the world writes next, they can have their headlines. This," he whispered, touching his chest, "this part's ours." She smiled. And maybe that's all we ever needed. In the quiet glow of the city, they stayed like that, two people who had learned that forgiveness wasn't weakness, and love wasn't perfection. It was persistence. As dawn began to break, the first golden light touched their faces. Ava whispered, half to herself, "Every broken thing can still be beautiful." Ethan nodded softly. "Especially us." And somewhere in the distance, a new day began, not with thunder or tragedy, but with gentle rain, steady hands, and the soft promise of something finally right.